So, I went and I did it. I got the Nintendo Switch 2, one of the most hated consoles in recent memory. Bought it day one, and felt no shame in doing so. But, should I have? Did Nintendo just have their way with me, or is the shade thrown at Nintendo Switch 2 just a massive coat from Sony fanboys and neck-bearded ideologues?
Yeah.
Well, stick around to find out. I'm sure we can figure this out in about 12 minutes or so, yeah? And while you're at it, why not drop a like and sub and, you know what? Don't worry about it. Let's just get on with it. Let's just start with the most talked about console feature right now, the price. Everyone knew something was up when Nintendo left it out from their Switch 2 Direct back in April. Personally, I don't think $450 is all that shocking, but then again, if Nintendo didn't want to talk about it, they knew it wasn't going to sit well with their key demographic. On the other hand, it's not as if some of the most vocal objectors to Nintendo's latest and greatest haven't gone out and bought the PlayStation 5 Pro for a little more than what would constitute a down payment for a house in a high-demand residential area. Not to mention the insane prices of the base PS5 during its launch. Good times, COVID and all that crap. Well, the joke's on them, because even if the Switch 2 costs about $450 in the United States, in Europe, things are a bit different. Even with the Mario Kart bundle, this price is pretty insane for the European customers. Another issue people have been super vocal about has been Nintendo's tendency to be a complete control freak when it comes to their IPs and games, hardware and whatnot. My question is, what changed? Isn't this really on brand with Nintendo? Haven't they always been kind of like this? Weren't these the cats who would ban YouTubers from playing their games online unless they got a cut from their ad revenue? Is Nintendo not known for sending their ninja teams to assassinate fan projects, emulator developers, and hardware hackers on the regular? Am I missing something? I'm not justifying any of this, by the way. Just saying that this is Nintendo, and they've been like this from day one. As such, I've always understood there to be this love-hate relationship between gamers and Nintendo, the company. But when it comes to the software, I think there's almost universal praise and appreciation for it. Nintendo knows what they're cooking, and regardless of how you view their business practices, the Nintendo experience is why people buy their stuff. Maybe that's why I went back on my decision to not get the Switch 2 at launch. It's like I needed to snort a few lines of that Miyamoto crack while it was still on the market. I wanted to be there for the collective launch party. Remember how it was when the OG Switch was released? You can go back to the Super Nintendo times, or even with Nintendo 64, Nintendo Wii, any of these other consoles. Nintendo has always something new up their sleeves, something that pushes gaming forward, even if it doesn't necessarily put them over the competition in the market. What comes to mind is Mode 7 graphics, a sound chip that made music and sound effects sound really awesome on the Super Nintendo. Mario 64, analog controls, the Rumble Pack, motion controls, and now what we have is hybrid gaming. Experiencing these advancements felt like opening a door to the next thing in gaming. And so, what it truly comes down to, I feel like subconsciously, I wanted to be there again. I wanted to be part of that launch craze, experience the new thing, I wanted to feel like I was a kid again, just for a little time. And you know what they say about nostalgia, ladies and gentlemen? Well, it's a
hell of a drug.
Nintendo was selling, and I was snorting. So, just days before the launch, I got sucked into the hype. I buckled like a worn-out table under so much weight. My resilience burned up like a freckled Swede in a Finnish sauna. You could say I went down like a Titanic, or an incredibly affordable lady of the night. In the end, I paid what Nintendo had asked for, and I did it with a smile. This is why I was dropping 600 euros on this thing. Was it worth it? Well, it depends. And I know this is a feckless YouTube answer people are tired of hearing. I wager most of you have already made up your mind and now you're just waiting to see if I make the right decision. Well, feel free to rip me a new one in the comments section, ladies and gentlemen, but I'd have to say that the Switch 2 surprised me in ways that I didn't expect. It's not all sunshine and roses, mind you, but hear me out. This is what I liked about the new console. This is probably the first time Nintendo's console looks and feels like premium tech. I'm getting proper Apple vibes from this thing. The Joy-Cons have improved over the previous ones by being larger and a bit more comfortable. Still, it's not as comfortable to hold as something like the Steam Deck, although it's much lighter, which makes it that much easier to hold in your hands for extended gaming sessions. Also, the speakers are much better over the OG Switches. The kickstand though is a freaking standout this time around. It really makes you wonder what Nintendo was thinking when they made the first Switch. I've used this feature extensively now and it makes a huge difference, I tell you. The dock though is a bit flimsy if I'm being honest. It bends like a bought out politician and seems about as dependable. Also, it should have more weight to it as not to fall from the table or TV stand when it's not carrying the console proper. It's the only thing that doesn't have that premium feel to it, and for that, I just don't like it. This is probably the first thing you'll notice about the Switch 2 as an obvious improvement over the first one. The size difference alone is considerable. It also looks great. I know there are some people crapping on the screen saying it's mid at best. These people are what we call graphics whores. If it's not OLED, it's not for me. But everyone else knows that you have to sometimes compromise in one aspect of your life to improve the other. And so it is with the consoles. 120 frames per second with VRR and half-assed HDR is good enough for me. It's a considerable step up from the previous iteration and tends to provide more than what most devices at this price range and class are offering. It more than gets the job done, and I can always hook it up to an OLED screen if the console display isn't enough for me. So there's that. I didn't expect this to be the killer feature for me, but here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Holy crap. Nintendo did us dirty for underselling this feature. Pretty much every Switch 1 game works on the Switch 2, except better. Nintendo's first-party games go the extra mile to improve the gameplay experience even more, and I hope the other developers follow up, because Switch 2 is now the de facto way to play Switch 1 games from here on out. If only we could get some of the developers to entertain the idea of doing some quality of life improvements to their Switch 1 games. I'd be willing to pay a few bucks for the service, to be sure, as long as people don't go overboard with what they're asking. As a point, I had never finished Tears of the Kingdom on Switch 1, but I'm sure as hell going to do it with the Switch 2. Zelda has never looked or felt as awesome as it does now, and it's difficult to express how much value this upgrade brings to the platform. Just like the first Switch, Switch 2 is about the most straightforward experience you can have with a game console. The operating system loads in fast, the menu is easy to understand, and getting to the fairly limited number of settings is fast and quite immediate. The onboarding process was also very intuitive and easy, although this might not have been the case if you owned the previous Switch and didn't have it laying around during the installation process. I guess transferring everything from your previous console isn't as easy once onboarding is done, but I kinda question the idea of transferring all of the old stuff to the new one anyway. You can do it game by game basis later on, and this holds true with game save data too. As a comparison, Steam does this the best. I guess the process is also smooth on PlayStation service, but for myself the process was painless, fast, and easy to understand. Now I know some people have complained that the Switch's menu is too sparse and limited feature-wise, but as a Steam Deck, PlayStation 4, and a PC owner, I don't see what the problem is. Less is more, and Switch 2 handles transitions and menus incredibly quickly and responsively. This holds true to the eShop as well, which is kind of a surprise even though it shouldn't be. You want your moneymaker to be as pleasant of an experience as possible, and compared to the store on Switch 1, the differences are day and night. The only thing that I feel like is a bit lacking right now is the way that everything is categorized and different games are filtered in the search function. I don't think Nintendo's ever been really good at this stuff, but they really should work on game discovery and how they promote games on their sales channel. I'm certain this is something that will be updated as time goes on. Looking at the online services, I feel like they're a nice addition, although I rarely play these games, and the reason is that these games tend to be too old, lack quality of life updates, like remapping controls, providing better resolutions, increasing frame rates, and implementing proper widescreen support, and the features of this nature. It's hard to get invested in these games then, when emulators do such a better job facilitating these experiences on the PC and the Steam Deck. With some effort though, Nintendo could turn this service into a goldmine, but right now the experience is a bit too frustrating. Just try playing GoldenEye or Jet Force Gemini on this thing. The controls alone ruin the experience. Nintendo needs to do something about this. Game chat. This feature caught me off guard. I legit thought this was going to be some gimped imitation of Discord. Instead, it turned out to be a really well thought out feature that I think I'll be using whenever I play with my friends. Game chat's superpower is the low barrier of entry. I don't mean this only financially, although the service will be merged into Nintendo's paid online service in a year. Still, the great thing about this thing is that you won't have to get a microphone or an earphone to use it. The thing that makes this feature shine is how effectively it removes background noise and allows you to engage chat without any extra peripherals. Your voice is clear and distinctive even from distance, which is quite surprising. All you need to do to open the chat is to press the dedicated chat button on your controller, create a lobby, and invite your friends in. Works like a charm. You can share your face, screen, or choose to delight others with your edgelord ways, I don't know. I know someone is bound to complain about the choppy video share in the service, but don't think that the point of the feature was to provide a smooth viewing experience for others. It's there to let your friends know where you are in the game and what you're doing. Regardless, Game Check came out of nowhere and surprised me with its ease of use and effectiveness. Kids are gonna go crazy with this, you watch. The Switch 2 is very comparable to the first one with its battery life, which is great considering that you can play games like Cyberpunk 2077 and Street Fighter 6 for more than 2 hours straight. I know Apple enthusiasts and other mobile device deviants like to act sour and complain that they could play games for hours on end on their iPhones. Whenever this happens, feel free to slap these weirdos awake from their social media-induced psychosis. And remind them that mobile games are not real games. They're trash and a waste of time. Over here we play real games, works of art, damn it! Anyway, from what I understand, the Steam Deck might actually have an advantage over the Switch 2 when it comes to indie games and titles that aren't technically demanding, whereas Nintendo devices hold the charge better in AAA games. So not fantastic, but in my opinion, clearly good enough. If you can play AAA games for more than 2 hours, 2.5 hours, that's pretty good in my book. Also, the way that I look at it is this: if you're playing games longer than 2 hours straight, you might not have a girlfriend or meaningful responsibilities in your life. Put down your games and go look for those. Come back and play more once you've leveled up in your life. Now at this point you must take me for a fanboy because all I'm doing is singing praises for the Switch. Does anything suck though? Surely there must be some limitations to the experience of owning this console. And you know what? You're right. There are. Let's get to those now. The price. I feel like there's no way around this fact, especially in today's economy. Nintendo thinks families should prioritize a gaming console over so many other things. It's a bit crazy if you ask me. Now $450 is somewhat acceptable for the console itself, but in Europe the price was 560 euros, and that's crazy. Especially since you'll have to dish out more to get the most out of the new console. Annual online service? Hey, that's another $40. Additional games come anywhere from $80 to $40 a pop. Not to mention, if you don't own the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom games already. These are previous generation games with premium price on the Switch 2, especially if you want to play them the way that God intended, with high resolution and frame rates. Like I said before, I folded like a cheap lawn chair and cuffed up the money. I completely understand anyone and everyone who decides to do otherwise. I feel like Nintendo fails to understand the current economic reality of their fan base, and that's a real shame. I can't imagine myself justifying spending $80 for a game in the coming years. If I do, it's one a year and that's about it. There are alternatives to Nintendo that provide superior prices and services like Valve. If Nintendo insists on moving forward with their current pricing plans, I've got no issues dropping Nintendo and continuing with the Steam Deck. I know it's not an apples to apple comparison, but it's good enough for me. Nintendo Switch 2 represents cutting-edge technology in the mobile world, but it can't hope to match what the PlayStation 5 and eventually the PlayStation 6 can do at a technical level. This is going to affect third-party games where a feature and visual parity will eventually become compromised to the point where most people won't be playing their third-party games on the Switch 2. This is especially true with competitive online games. I'm fairly sure those weren't exactly popular on the first Switch to begin with, but it would be nice to be able to jump into a game of Warzone or something similar to it on my Switch 2 without feeling like I'm only experiencing half a game. That's the concession you make with hybrid consoles, and I'm okay with it. But this is also a reality everybody is going to have to face as time moves on. And finally, Nintendo's attitude could use a lot of work. I know they're just coming off of the wave of victory that they had with the original Nintendo Switch, and it seems like they feel a little invincible, for which reason they're making a lot of these decisions that are pissing people off in the periphery. I don't feel like it's going to take a lot more to get the general consumer annoyed, and for that reason I feel like Nintendo should be careful about the way that they treat their core customer base. This alone is a reason why a lot of the YouTubers and people who consider themselves influencers are not interested in the Nintendo Switch platform. They don't like the way that Nintendo is treating them. And if Nintendo doesn't change course on this, it's very possible that eventually they're going to drive their core customers away towards someone else, like the magnificent Lord Gaben and his Steam Deck. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, it's pretty obvious I like the Switch 2. I feel like it's a safe bet from Nintendo's side considering they have a tendency of flipping the table and starting anew with every new console release. This time, they're sticking with what works and building on top of that. Not bad at all, and surprisingly well thought out backwards compatibility with Switch 1 games creates a nice continuity between the two consoles, allowing previous customers to continue using their existing library with the new, more expensive console. Hardware and feature-wise, I think the Switch 2 is great. You need to try Game Chat to see how effortlessly fun it is to use. The new display allows a really good experience with high frame rates and VRR, which makes Cyberpunk 2077 a smoother mobile experience than it has any right to be. The biggest issues are the pricing, especially in Europe and when it comes to games. This is a trend in the gaming industry though, so in general, expect to see others follow suit, but it sucks that Nintendo is pushing it so hard for it. The other problem is locked nature of the Nintendo consoles and the anti-consumer attitude Nintendo has with regards to its devices and IPs. For some people, that's going to be a deal breaker. For most, it's the affordability. In the end, does the Switch 2 earn the reputation it has among the more vocal YouTubers and influencers alike? Nah. They're just looking for clicks and engagements. Most of them bought the device anyway. If you feel like you're ready to get into the hybrid gaming craze, this is as good a time as any to get into the action. Switch 2 is, in my opinion, the smoothest way to enjoy your games in a handheld form factor. Another good choice is the Steam Deck, although the user experience is not as streamlined and user-friendly as the Nintendo's. Still, the game prices are better and the console is also cheaper. You can also do a lot more with the device than you can with the Switch 2. Regardless of what you choose to do, I hope the Switch 2 influences developers to acknowledge handheld devices in their development practices. At the moment, most of the PC games available for the Steam Deck and the like are not optimized for these platforms. Perhaps the success of the Switch might push developers to account for these handheld PCs and convince them to target more games specifically to take advantage of the handheld hardware. Only time will tell. Anyway, you guys been watching Tech Dad Impact. Hope you've got something out of this. My name is Chris, and I hope to see you in my next video. But until then, I'll be playing more of my Nintendo Switch 2. Peace.